Welcome to the Magus Talk podcast. My name is Ari, with my cohort Jay, having casual conversations on all matters esoteric.
All right, this is something I've been dying to ask you, and so it's completely like I just thought of it, okay? Now, again, we have to give nicknames to people that we have had experiences with in the past. I don't want to disrespect anybody, certainly, but anyway, now I remember, now there's two parts to this story, so I'm going to let you talk after part one. This is part one with Big Redneck. We were, he's a martial arts teacher of mine, and we were training with knives, and it was like one of the first times I ever met him, and we were just in our own little world. He was over there, a couple of other students were over here, and I was just in my own little world, and I'm like going, this is just so weird. Everything got really slow. My legs got weak. I'm over here by myself, and I go, man, did something weird just happen? Are you guys okay? I'm not high. I'm not on drugs or anything like that. I may have had a few beers, but that was it. And I looked over at Big Redneck's face, and it was just flushed red, and he was like, I'm fine. How about everybody? And it was like, so...
What were you doing? Did you like go through some moves or something?
Hey, no, I'm just over here practicing just 4 basic diagonal strikes with a knife and then a stab. Again, the same 4 basic knives in a stab. Just very simple by myself drill, and he was completely separate. Okay? Over on the other side of the room. Now, the room wasn't all that big of a deal, but it was like everything just started moving really slowly, and it felt like the energy got drained out of my body. Now,
how fast were you doing this?
I'm sorry.
Were you going like really fast? Were you doing
No, super slow.
Okay.
Now, again, let's move not to part 2. This is still part 1.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and start giving names now because I still talk to this girl. She doesn't care about whether I tell the story or not. Dana. I went to a restaurant with me and her, the rest of her family, and her daughter. Now, her daughter did not like me at the time at all. Now she's actually a big fan of me. But anyway, at the time, she didn't like me, and I could tell it, and she didn't like me being with Dana. And then all of a sudden, the room just got super slow, very disoriented. It was like the ground almost was taken out from under me. And then I talked to Dana later, and she says, yeah, she can do that kind of thing. She does that before she gets into fights, and she will kick people's asses that way.
Yes.
And Dana was like, she's done it to me before. And to end this part 1 of the story, 3 guys tried to mug her one day, and she ended up taking their money. So this is how bewitching this girl is. Can you explain it? What's happening?
There are different types of people in this world, and some people, if they get a taste of power or the ability to manipulate other people or control them, they go haywire. Other people are like Dana's daughter.
And then they get elected. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Whether you like it or not, you think you have free will. You think you're getting greedy and battered by the moment, but you're actually guided by something.
You're goddamn right. Yeah.
There's something there that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
And this is a real thing. So I was determined to learn this stuff. And I started with hypnosis. My father had some hypnosis book, and I realized that this guy's actually interested in psychic stuff. My father was a physicist, by the way, and an immigrant from Greece to the United States. So he didn't want to give himself a bad rap, but he saw a book on hypnosis that claimed to be able to regress you beyond your birth to the previous life. So he was very intrigued by that stuff. And he would often tell me, it's like, look, physics isn't against stuff like telepathy. Telepathy is like you're a receiver and a transmitter. A radio is telepathic. If a radio, which is an inanimate object, can beam signals, your brain should be able to do something on its own level. Things like psychic abilities or the paranormal, if you really think about it, it's not so illogical. To a certain point, then you get into far-out stuff, but you can get into far-out stuff with science. You can get into far-out stuff with history, distort the truth, whatever. It happens in every field. My thing, as a trained physicist, I'm not interested in explaining the occult in a scientific way, but I do want to approach it in a way where I don't take stuff for granted. There's no need to take anything for granted. The whole point of it is you got to sensitize yourself to it, because it's like learning a language. Only your own body mind learns the language. It's the language of energy, of sensation. They have the scent of the eyesight, hearing, taste, and then the fifth sense is speech, because the only thing is we're not absorbing the sense. It's a yang sense. So you actually create the sense. You're actually creating sound for other people to hear. So that's a whole separate sense than your hearing itself. And it's a very special sense. It's at the very center. It's at the heart of all the senses, because it's the one that where you come out into the world. You are released into the world through your word. Very simple concepts that are yet so profound, and people think it's a waste of time to explore these because they'll never get you anywhere. Because if you try to go in the world and live by those kind of things, you're going to have a hard time. So there must be some way through that quandary. And that's what I was exploring all my life. By the way, yeah, like I said, I'm a trained physicist. Got a PhD and everything, was into it for a number of years, and then I couldn't, because any kind of esoteric progression that I wanted to make could not be done in that context. It's too demanding on the mind. Not because it's hard or you got to study and stuff. It's because you're always analyzing. You always have to be careful what you say. Imagination does not come into it. You have to can show the facts, the measurements, the quantities, the equations all the time, and it never lets up. Not only that, but because it's partial information, because you can't really function on analysis alone, all kind of twisting of the truth comes in. And because it's all analytical, it's like lawyers. You can't beat them at their own game. They've rigged the deck. They made up the language. They made up everything. All the precedents, all the primaries, all the things you have to know, that everything is set in stone in such a way, no way you're going to veer off into this direction. You're going to go straight where everything has gone. It's all designed to sustain itself. Now, we don't need to get into what they call conspiracy theories or anything like that. Let's shy away. Reality is as normal as can be. The fact remains, though, that the world is troubled, and different people explain it in different ways. The esotericist says the following: humanity has been through crises after crises, historically, for a long time. We are going somewhere, however, because we learned from this collectively. Memory isn't just restricted in my brain as little chemical signals and stuff. It actually forms patterns that propagate throughout everything. I mean, these patterns are, you might call them, I think in physics they might call them scalar patterns, but what they are basically is they have no vector. There's no direction. They don't go anywhere. So how can they propagate? No, they appear all at once, omnipresent, holographically. What they call at every point in space, they emerge. So a new pattern just emerges at every point in space. Your thoughts are on such a level, and not because you're special or whatever, but human thought. Any electromagnetic pulse that's coming from complex neural biology imprints itself on what we may call the ethers, some kind of field. And what is this? Well, how can you prove it? You only prove it through the people that perceive it. That's the proof is in the perception. So these people are sincerely perceiving something. They're not making it up. And how do I know they're not making it up? Well, there's a shitload of them, first of all. Pardon my French. And second of all, you could be one of them and see how it's like. Because you can see anybody who follows a certain progression and can face certain demons will reach a point of greater clarity where at least they'll see that they're going somewhere. And that's where you come in. I mean, I was a witness to your situation where you appeared in a crisis on the forums.
Oh, yeah. It was that was a hell of a time, man. It was 2006, I think, when my ex-wife and me, we still talk, by the way. I think, her mom, she's more of her mom than she is of herself right now. I can just feel that, and it's kind of a turnoff. So it's like, I don't know.
Didn't we discuss that would happen though?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Yeah, we absolutely did. And so that's kind of, what went down. What went down. But back in 2006, she just fell into a vat of depression. It was just horrible. She was And I thought it had something to do, and it could have been a little bit to do with like what I was doing with Tai Chi and other martial art forms, but most of it was coming from her mother because she didn't want us to be together. And it was also coming from my mom too, which I didn't really understand that until like years later. So it's like this big mother battle. Mom hated her, her mom hated me, and neither of them wanted us together. But anyway, I got on this forum. And I had a martial art teacher at the time saying, okay, yeah, some of this stuff turns into magic, but don't mess with magic. It's really dangerous. Okay. But it's like, it's like if you tell me to do something, if you give me rules, I'm going to break.
What is maybe, see, you always take it for granted that they're talking about the same thing you are when they say magic. Most people on occult forums like spell it with a K or a CK or something, as if it's different or whatever. But you have different people at different levels of how informed they are, let's say, and also at different intuitive levels, and also for the case of a lot of occult forums at different levels of mental, competency, you might say. So, there's a lot of people who latch on to the power of archetypes, because archetypes, which are basically psychic patterns of the psyche that are universalized.
Yeah, I hate to just like break in here, but yeah, it is so blatant. There's this one guy that I really liked, and you remember him too, the librarian. Remember that guy?
Yeah, maybe.
Hang on, let me type his name in the chat box.
Where's the chat box? What's to say? I should. Oh, him. Yeah. No, I was gonna say. You don't want me to say the name. Good.
Yeah.
Of course.
So, but
the guy who did the Olympic spirits, remember?
Yeah. And the guy has a great personality. I really enjoyed talking with him online. I met him. But it was like he was caught in this vortex of Dungeons and Dragons. Oh God, someone's hexing me. Oh yeah, it's just like
he was
not the way
a ghost hunter. I think he wanted to be on some ghost hunting TV show.
Yeah,
and competitor got him, and he never really got over that, I think.
Yeah, and it was so anyway, it's like, but it's like it turned into like this big war, big power struggle, and big.
That's what I noticed on forums. That's the whole what I'm trying to say with the archetypes, and then your mother and the other woman, the mother-in-law. Each of them had a sense of how their child's life would go according to their imagination and what suited them, what they would get, because it's mothers, they love their kids, but they also go, well, I think this is right, and it's always right for me. Of course, they're comfortable with the outcome. They will not pick an outcome for you where they're uncomfortable, let's put it that way, knowingly. So these mothers came in contact with archetypes from different parts of the Pacific that almost like cross-wired them. What it is basically an outcome of energy of a relationship that they couldn't handle. It was too much for them. When you got something new that comes up, if you ever started meditating among your normie friends, the normie friends will, even if you don't say anything and they don't know, they'll go, something's changed about you. You're different.
Yeah. My dad who and who I still believed a lot happened with him before he died. I say his soul is redeemed. That's the only thing I've experienced. But anyway, when I remember when things really started, I really started to push the envelope. He came over drunk one day, and the conversation just escalated into, "You're going to hell." And I'm like, where did that come from?
Wasn't some weird stuff going?
Anyway, wait.
Yeah.
The conversation dissolved, and the next day he comes back up to me, Jay, I'm sorry about that. It's like, but it really pushed some buttons, man. When you change at a deep level, people are like, whoa, what the hell are you doing?
When I was in college, I took up meditation for several years, and I used to go to the library and look at the metaphysical books and all that stuff. And people never kept tabs on me, and I never said. We'd go to the bars, we'd drink, we'd shoot the breeze in the evening, studied, and had our part-time jobs. But I would, after some time passed, several years, I don't know, into college, people started telling me, "So you think you're God, right?" Like, what? And no, it's not some crazy zone where they come up to you on the street and out of the blue tell you that. But this is people, in a conversation. Yeah, you think you're what? Just because I sit cross-legged in the room and don't say anything for a while? Not in public, my room. Closed doors. It's like, we heard you meditating out there, boy. What's going on? Some crazy.
That dog won't hunt, son.
Yeah, something like that.
My bad. I'm from Southeast Texas, by the way, everybody. So
yeah,
that's why you hear the accent.
I'm from Southeast Europe. So we're
you've got the normal accent, man. Or actually, you've got kind of you spent some time in New York, right?
Yeah, a lot of time in Philadelphia. Close to Philadelphia.
I get that.
But I was a kid. Yeah, this was like 70s. I was a kid, and then my parents also, since my dad was a physicist who would go on these sabbaticals and come to the United States. And he went to Atlanta one year, Auburn, Alabama, San Francisco. When I was in school, I'd have to go with him, of course. I didn't stay back. So I'd hop around schools a lot. But my English is basically a product of that. And then a product of just going to Greek school for many, many years, like people of my generation did when parents would go back and forth. A lot of immigrants returned to Greece as the economic conditions at the time got better and stuff.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think enough of the personal matter stuff. I think anybody who's listening out there, y'all know that we're just normal people who had normal lives, so to speak, who got really interested in metaphysical stuff, not either because it was like an internal thing like with me, but also because your life is challenging. And when it's challenging, you want to do something that's resourceful enough and you don't have to pay a high price for it.
And it's challenging, but also, especially when I got into Tai Chi, because I started martial arts when I was like 18. And before that, I was at 10 years of age, I was doing gymnastics, so really physical life. But the thing about Tai Chi and the whole world of magic was it's just so much damn fun. It's a lot of fun. I mean,
see, you're going to have a lot of righteous people angry at you now. When you mix the word magic and fun, it's a dangerous combination because people tend to go unhinged thinking that they can just grab a wand and shove it up anywhere they can find, and think something good will happen.
I hope nobody walks in the room when they're doing that. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it's the old, plus the culture spits out so much Harry Potter and so much of the other kind and so much. Dungeons and Dragons, at least, used certain lore, you might say, fantasy lore. Okay, Tolkien-type lore. That's what they based it on. So this was but they expanded it beyond that. And they used all that lore in a way where teenagers, for example, were hungry for a certain release of the imagination, especially teenage boys, as my girlfriend likes to call them. Teenage boys had all this pent-up energy, and they want to unleash it in future possibility. Now, my naivete when I was like in Dungeons and Dragons was I thought everybody had my ideals. And they didn't. Most people wanted to imagine being a selfish bastard somewhere in some fantasy land so they could practice being a selfish bastard in a more refined and civilized way in their normal lives.
Wow. I never really thought of it that way. Go ahead, sorry.
But these were people who you'd never guess were selfish bastards. They just admired it so much. Look, when you admire something like that, the thief, I think thieves are cool, man, because they can get whatever they want. Live by a so-called code. Yeah, the code's there so their own people don't stab them in the back. That's a survival thing. And you think that's sustainable because, it's survival of the fittest, and I know I'm one of the fittest, of course. And there's a certain zone where people don't realize that what you think is occultism is actually Dungeons and Dragons. It's role play generally, and role playing is something children do because it exercises the mind and prepares them for creative thought and prepares them to be able to confront life's challenges and this and that and the other. Role playing is a good thing. It's even a sacred thing because it reaches deeper states of awareness where you can play a role and then embody it. And if it has healthy qualities, you will absorb those healthy qualities into your psyche, right?
Yeah.
So, no, it makes sense. And somebody would say, well, that's just brainwashing, or that's just learning, or that's just hypnosis. And it's like, well, whatever it is, if it's not fun, it's not going to happen. You can give them all those other names to stuff that's not fun. We're saying your instinct to be imaginative, to be creative, to be as the military in America like to say, more than you can be, you know.
But be all you can be.
All you can be. No, well, I guess that's. But you have to be more than you can be, or else we'll whip you to death, you know. So, anyways, my thing is that this desire to theatralize life, to theatralize the potentials of the esoteric, the mystery, is natural. It's why we tell fairy tales to children. We tell them these stories to spark their imagination, because eventually, as they grow up and learn the structures of the so-called world and deal with their own issues, they can approach the so-called magical aspect of their own capabilities in a way that's constructive and creative and healthy. I'm not sticking religious morality in. I'm not sticking any kind of morality in. I'm talking about the instinct to be mentally healthy. We have it. There's no way, but we have it physically. Why can't we have it mentally? I mean, we know what's, how when we feel healthy. Oh, I don't know. I feel sick, but if you feel sick long enough, of course, you're going to think that's your normal. I mean, a lot of people do become desensitized and stuff. You get people walking around with tons of diseases that anybody who's done a little fasting and stuff can detox, can realize how much is really in there.
Yeah.
Psychically, it's the same thing. So as a younger person, or as psychologically a mature person, this isn't about learning things to become disciplined. This isn't about, because a lot of times people separate the mature from the immature in terms of how much suffering you can take, how disciplined you are, how much you can deny yourself. Isn't it smarter to continue where our childhood started, but mature, where we're not kids anymore? Isn't it smarter to continue the actual, because we assume we're born healthy, aren't we? We're born as nature intended us, maybe for one split second, maybe it doesn't even count, maybe even in the womb, but somewhere along the line there is an initial condition that got the ball rolling for us to be here. And this initial condition can't be bad. It has to be a good thing, else it would never gone to where we are now. A spark of life, whatever it is, a soul impulse, a desire, a dream to be something or to experience something. Without that motivation, that is our purity. But we can usually find it in childhood if we're not terribly traumatized. Even if we are, sometimes that even helps us find it even better. So for me, magic and the occult, take away those boundaries between the Tai Chi and between art and between the wonders of a child and the imagination and the sense of energy and the ability to go into altered states or trance states, whatever, with or without chemical assistance, as one might say. But through certain cultivation practices, through focusing your attention in a way, through practicing to exercise your mobility of awareness, to be able to expand your awareness out like you're beyond your body, or to contract it in, or to move it around, to be able to move it like a muscle. That is part of the training. But the training is an athletic discipline. It's fun. So where does the magic come in? Well, that's where you use it in your life. And then, I'll mess with people and do whatever. Yeah, and you will also have consequences for that. Unless you're a psychopath. I mean,
honestly, in that world, just, get a hobby. It's just like, there are more constructive and more fun things to do. One thing that I want to do is, so the genies we deal with, okay? There's a whole bunch of genies with rhetoric.
Okay, hold that thought for a second.
Okay.
Anybody listening? The genies we deal with. See, this is a casual conversation, Magus Talk, because for us dealing with genies.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
everybody. I forgot okay.
No, it's great because it gives an opportunity. Because this is Magus Talk. It's a casual talk about people who have done this stuff for a long time and are into this stuff, into the philosophy of it, into their life changing from it, and doing it in a way that is neither satanic, demonic, fanatic, or otherwise insane. But at the same time, it's not moralizing or sticking you in a box or you're delusional. No, it is basically being able to understand the basics of being human and not sacrifice them just because something says so. You don't need to make stupid decisions when you know that they're stupid decisions. So because we live in a culture that is constantly mistaking the reality of an esoteric tradition for a bunch of stupid decisions or imposing stupid decisions where there's supposed to be inspiration and creativity, something needs to be said. But we need to say it casually because this is normal. Yeah, oh yeah, you're trying to normalize it like everything else. Look, the stuff you see everywhere is a bunch of people not knowing, like Jay says here, get a hobby. You really need meaning in your life, and magic is not going to give you meaning. That's more the mystical side, you might say. But then again, you can, if what you really want is better social relations, and why do you want those relations? Do you want somebody to coddle you? Do you want your problems taken away? Is it too much for you? And not that anything of this is wrong. There's no judgment about it. The fact is, you cannot proceed without self-honesty. And one thing, if somebody's a psychopath, they should be aware that, well, I seem to be not condoning, but encouraging my own tendencies towards psychopathic behavior, or at least a level of selfishness where I'm actually promoting suffering, even if it's in a subtle manner. And I don't speak of microaggression and crap like that. I'm talking about pouring your negativity onto somebody in a way that hurts them. Now, there's more to things than that. But power trips and trying to compensate and vampirism, where you actually say, well, I actually, every time I inhale and imagine energy coming in, I feel a hell of a lot better, but everybody around me seems to be feeling worse, or they seem to be more depressed. And it's like, dude, I don't believe there's such a thing as some immediate karma. You're going to get away with it. You're going to cause a lot of suffering. But once the people who suffer start reclaiming their energies, because you better hope that's why you go toward the so-called dark side. It's a snowball effect. You better keep doing what you're doing to keep anybody who's suffering from things like this from reclaiming their integrity, from reclaiming their energy, from healing, from coming back from it, because then their psychic immune system has an energy that you may not find palatable, and that can spread to other people too. So eventually there is a zone where psychic vampirism does meet its consequence boundary, but you can go years without that. There's people who flourished on this stuff. Nobody should be, delusional that there is a karmic law that's going to come in as if some lawyer or some constitutionalist up high posed it. Karma is not justice. Karma is basically something you let out that you haven't realized you've let out, that's imprinted, that may be beyond this lifetime, or who cares? I mean, not who cares, but who knows if it even has to do with reincarnation. You may just be susceptible to it, like people are susceptible to viruses. Some people are more susceptible, or food allergies or something. It may be a soul food allergy, but then you're even more responsible to correct it. You don't have to suffer from food allergies. There is such a thing as what you might call a psychic immune system, because human beings are naturally, thoughts are fields, they extend beyond the cranium. If you don't believe that thoughts extend beyond the cranium into a field around you, shut off this podcast now, because we're going to piss you off, But let's get back.
On that note,
yes.
What I was saying earlier with the genies and the genies we deal with, rhetoric comes up a whole lot. And so I was thinking, well, one definition of rhetoric is to, get a crowd of people in a story I'm making and then make them all laugh like a comedian. And so that's something I want to do. And I thought, what a great way to define rhetoric is just kind of bring everybody into my little world and put them under, a spell that they all agreed on to be in to begin with.
More than you think.
There to laugh.
More than you can possibly, well, you probably do imagine, but, more than your average listener can imagine. Because what we're talking about here is the Solomonic magic of the grimoire that's very well known, to the point of, look at these losers, just two more idiots dealing with this grimoire, which is the art of Goetia, or the Lemegeton, the lesser key of Solomon, basically. Now, this is good because that's the whole point. It attracted me because it's popular, because it's unique, for the same reason it attracted everybody else. The thing is, it's so coded and full of holes, and really an incomplete system meant to be completed by somebody who understands symbolism and can apply it. It's adaptable to the times as well because it's astrologically based and there's a lot that goes to it. So what the system says basically, and again, let's take it at face value, and this is my interpretation of it, because what happens is you have a list of names that are allegedly demons or spirits. We call them genies because they're like the jinn of the Arabian Nights. They are creatures of smokeless fire, and basically they are creatures of energy. They are not creatures of consciousness, let's say like angels are in that tradition. Creatures of energy are more closer to our biological frame. Just take out the molecules and the chemistry, we're also creatures of energy. Even our breath all creates physical energy. We have bioelectric fields, we have magnetic fields. All of this, the flow, our metabolism creates energy. The only difference with the esoteric arts is that you're talking from a position of experiencing it, not from a position of holding a measurement device and taking measurements and quantifying it. So the genies in this sense are 72 spirits. It's a list. They are zodiac related. You start from the designated spot, which is not the spring equinox. I mean, there's a date given in the grimoire that tells you that on this date, so-and-so happens, and the first genie is in the east. So the first genie is in the east. It corresponds to an astrological sign, and you can take all the genies and put them in a row. There's 72 of them. Each one of them corresponds to one of the 36 decans of the zodiac. Decans are basically arcs of the zodiac circle. They're 10 degrees. There's 3 of them for every sign. There are 12 signs. So this is casual conversation again. So it's not an introductory thing. So if you're interested in the topic and this is over your head, somehow you will let me know at some point, or somebody will, and we'll try to steer it into zones at least where we are more informative at a other level. But we'd like to keep this spontaneous because there's a lot of cool stuff going on. And I think that if the concepts are more expressed intuitively, because you got, what are spirits, for example? Well, they're experiences of a symbol. You have a symbol, a name, a sign, you focus on it, you start feeling an energy from it. And it doesn't happen with anything. You don't just draw a symbol and it happens, unless you're really opened up and you can bring life to any symbols. But these symbols are those that have been created by other people who have evoked experiences with them. The genie itself, as far as we know, it's an entity. You don't know what it is. There's feedback with you because what you do is you are focusing on certain symbols that are not human, they're not personal, they're very abstract. A lion riding a bear, wearing a tuba, screaming hallelujah, who knows? And these kinds of images all have esoteric meaning. They're allegories. Even if you don't know what the allegories are, if you focus and meditate on it, like you do on an image of a Indian deity, they have 6 arms, they carry all these weapons, they have snakes around them, they have something else on the crown. These are all symbols that you meditate on because they represent aspects of consciousness and awareness and energy that you cannot explain otherwise, especially if you're like living in some village of illiterates. So you need to use imagery where you say, okay, the goddess is 4 directions, she encompasses all of space. How do you encompass all of space? You give her 4 arms for every direction in space, or 10 arms, because there's really 10 directions. You got 8 directions on the horizontal, and then 1 up and 1 down. But anyways, things like that.
Let me interrupt you just real quick.
Okay.
Anybody out there listening, just know, coming from my standpoint, I'm pretty much confused about 60 to 65% of the time when Ari says anything. If you feel lost, don't worry about it, because from a very beginner standpoint, and this would be back in 2006, I got better, for lack of a better word. I got more well versed. I learned. And it was a really fun journey every step of the way, even though some bad things happened. But, it's what I'm saying is it's okay to be a beginner. It's okay to be lost.
You were like, I'm doing Tai Chi. I'm going through these altered states of consciousness and stuff. And then things are happening and crises in my life. I need something more. Nobody around you wants you to learn magic. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody, if magic is real completely, and when I say magic, I mean causing an event to happen through the power of your intention or will or desire. Wishing on a genie, that's magic. Or just intent, they call it manifesting in New Age circles or even psychology stuff. But it's basically, and it has nothing to do with creating reality. What it is altering the course of events in your favor. And there are flashy ways to do it. There are dramatic ways to do it. You can create vibrations of the psyche that affect people, places, and things. All of that works. Most people don't quite know how or why. But do you want somebody to have all those abilities that's right next to you? Do you want your neighbor to be like that? Maybe they're jealous of you. Maybe they want your girlfriend or your boyfriend. Whatever. Do you want a person with human flaws to have any kind of abilities that can mess with your mind or your life? No. They can be a monster. It doesn't mean that they are. Just the possibility evokes primordial fears of shamans who knows what they could do back in the day. It wasn't just people hopping around a flame yelling and shaking their rattles. That's ridiculous. These people were the wise people of their community. They could heal people. If they couldn't measure up to a true connection with the underworld or the unseen that everybody knew was there. Everybody in a prehistoric community, I can guarantee, was sensitive enough to nature and to themselves and to other human beings because they had no electric fields, they had no technology, they had no artificial food, whatever. They were living naturally, so they were sensitive enough to know that there is a spirit world, to know that there is something they can't see that affects them, but they can't interact with it. They won't listen to them. But there is somebody in the village who can. And that person, they will trust with the lives of their children, with where they're going to go, where if they're nomads, they got to go somewhere else where the hunting grounds are. But let's just say the wise person of the village. Wise means somebody who can apply knowledge. It's not enough to just know. You have to be able to embody it, which means understanding. And everybody who's into like hermetic magic knows the basics: knowledge, understanding, wisdom. Wisdom is when you can do it, when you're good at it in life, when you can apply it. And magic is wisdom. So magic needs to be applied, but what you're applying has to come from an essence that is at the very foundation. You need to have a heart. You need to be able to be honest with yourself brutally all the time and to be sensitive to what's going on around you without being sucked in by it. Now, the last one is where most of us make our mistakes, and they're understandable. You get sucked in by situations, and the feedback, if you're honest with yourself, will eventually give you an understanding of the patterns. Because a lot of all this, where's the magic, dude? Look, this is the magic. And I suspect that many people who do not want the majority of human beings to learn this kind of thing, and they're right, they shouldn't, they're not ready for it. But what they don't want is for creative human beings who can rain on their parade to learn these things. The example always has to be bad, in other words. You go into occult circles, you start using things, you'll run into people who are psychic. We saw that in the forums, right? You can feel it.
Yeah.
I mean, you beat yourself over the head for like a long time because you don't want to admit that this is going on. You let it happen. You make every possible excuse in the book until it becomes overwhelming, in your face, and corroborated by others next to you. Oh, you're all delusional. Well, then everybody's hallucinating en masse on the world, because at some point you got to call a spade, and spades cut.
Yeah.
So we're saying all of these things, and when I go off on a tangent, we mentioned the genies. I have this sense of, I feel obligated to tell people, to give them an understanding of what genies are. And that's asking too much. It's asking too much for some audience over there just listening to somebody rant, and too much for me, because you can't convey that in any kind of conceptual splurge expression. It can only be done piecemeal, a little at a time, and then somebody just gets a whiff of it, gets a feel of it, and it's very, very challenging, because at the end you go, well, I'm experiencing this way. It's easier to go if you personify them. Cars are female, the ships are female, they develop a relationship with this inanimate object.
It's funny. This is I don't know how much sense this is going to make, but I know my dad his car was like an extension of himself, and I never really understood that at all until I started living in mine. That's what I do. I just kind of I teach English as a second language. I got mobile internet. I just kind of drive everywhere and live wherever I want to, and it's awesome. I'm having a blast, and now my vehicle's become an extension of myself, and it's like the genies when they supply familiars, it's like, okay, they're kind of like me. Or at least parts of
Jay, you're expressing the fact that you're just some normal guy. You're not brother so-and-so or frater familius or this or that. You are not some special shaman. You don't channel the Pleiadians. You are basically some not average. You're a normal Texas guy from a normal Texas high school that basically at some point in his life touched a different culture and ended up cycling that culture's energy, and that expanded your awareness to the point that you reached a crisis. You needed something more. And a lot of people do that. Not about the culture thing, but needing something more. You go to religion, you go to philosophy, you go to politics. The thing is, Jay to me knew, Dr. Jay, that's what I call him because he's graduated here from the school of spontaneously following your bliss in a wise way. You only do stupid to learn, and to learn basically of where it's going to get you, because unless you do something stupid, it's not just, well, I know that's stupid and I did it. Yeah, but you had no clue where it was going to take you. They say with the AI that the only way the AI can even approach any kind of creativity in anything and not just regurgitate what you told it to or whatever is to be able to make mistakes. They plant bugs in the program on purpose to make the AI go glitchy, and then in correcting it seeks new possibilities. So when you do something stupid, you are thrown in the deep end and you activate responses, and you also observe things. For example, let's say you say something stupid and offend somebody, but then you realize what a bad person they are because their offense leads to further revelations and who knows what about something that you should have known, because it's not in your best interest to hang out with that person. This is just an example. Usually people's stupidity is in social thing with their relationships with other people. So it isn't stupidity. It's only technically stupid. It's basically sometimes we trip ourselves up on purpose. But the whole point of it all is that hatred is removed in a way that does not, self-hatred, hatred of others is removed in a way that does not compromise your integrity. You don't have to sacrifice yourself. You don't have to throw who you are out the window. Ego is really the part of yourself that other circumstances or people or whatever, or even your own reactions have fooled you into believing. So the ego really is just, a story we tell ourselves, and that gets us by. But it could be based on the factual person, who we really are. So the genies are formations of awareness, whether they extend our awareness or not, but they come from a level of awareness known as the underworld. The underworld is a field of being where basically the ancients called it the unseen. The word Hades in ancient Greek means unseen, things that we can't see. So as some people would say, the light spectrum, they use the light spectrum as an example. You can only see so many frequencies, but beyond those, you're blind. That's a metaphor. This unseen isn't just the eyes or the other senses. It's an awareness of the presence of things that when you tune into the underworld, this awareness becomes obvious. This presence, there are presences. There's shifts in your sense of self and your sense of emotion and what you feel and how you think. You can learn to recognize these as perception symptoms. Just like you learn to recognize colors when you're a baby and you first open your eyes, you can't see anything. It's all a blur. Eventually your eyes get into focus because your brain gets into the routine of interpreting as you gain feedback and stuff. So the same thing with the unseen. You need to acclimate to it. And what does society do? It gives us stupid myths. It gives us stupid images. It gives us stupid interpretations. It gives us fear. It gives us this and that. So an occultist or a person who deals with the mysteries of existence at that level would say, well, that's part of it, man. That's the initiation. It's when you pass through a gate, those gates I send you through the AI thing, making those images. Yeah. You cross a portal. You move from one state to another state. And these states don't need to blend, but there's a transition area where you can harmonize how the result is going to be. See, we're human beings. We're like sound studios or artist studios where basically we mix harmonics. A chef, just like a chef mixes various tastes to come out with a delicacy, or a musician mixes notes to come out with harmonies. We are mixing energies together in our perception and through our lives. All our experiences are energetic. Energy just means motion. If there's action going on, if something is going on, if anything moves, even if you're aware, all of this involves energy. It involves motion. And it's all about relationship. So you have a relationship with this awareness. And it doesn't matter what it is, but a familiar is when you take this primordial awareness out of the underworld, you personalize it, and then you personalize it even more, so it's an expression of you. It becomes you. You don't become it. You don't lose yourself in it. It has to become you. So what the genie does is basically represent the central intelligence that goes, here's a part of me. And from there on, you have the app. And the app is basically telling you, connecting you to me, And he's like, oh, but that's like a god. They're principles of awareness that represent something that when a creative magus associates them with portals in the zodiac wheel, something magical happens. And that magical thing is that these principles of awareness can aid in your own evolution and cultivation, which means, well, what does that mean? That means in awakening your potential as a human being on Earth. That means gaining psychic abilities, gaining more sensitivity. That means being able to control your life without being controlling, being able to find that creative place where the Taoist says, just let it go to the Tao, or the Westerner goes, control everything. Find the mix, man. Create a synthesis of the two. You don't have to be a control freak to actually navigate through your life. You don't have to just throw the steering wheel out the window. Just let life take you along. Why can't you have both? Sometimes we like to sit back and just drink our pina colada while the scenery goes by. Other times we like to
Yeah, it's like there are aspects where I want something to happen, but I also want to be surprised every once in a while as well.
Exactly.
And that's where the fun happens, man.
Exactly. See, the thing is that requires courage. You have that innately, and yet if it pounds you too much, it can get really. You start getting discouraged, and you withdraw from the zone. And you go, oh, it's not possible. That's what a lot of people, like the more conservative teachers, might think. You're going to go into insanity. And from what I've observed in my dealings with various people who have gone into zones like this, even if you're messing with archetypes, the Christians used to say, don't do Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, I've actually seen people get messed up like that.
Yeah,
and these people, like I said, in their imagination, they loved playing the role of the bad guy, because then they got to fine-tune how they would play the same role in civilization without other people being aware. And also, a lot of people are psychic, and they know they're psychic, but they won't tell you. And they won't tell anybody, and they'll even tell everybody that there's no such thing. Either they're in denial and hiding from themselves, and because it gets them by, and people can do that, or else it's deliberate. I've heard a lot of people who are like, oh, that's all bull, and that's this and that, and then privately, hey, I really wish they would trip and fall, and they did.
Yeah.
Where they I guess something must be. It doesn't matter if you think it's true or not. If it keeps working for you since you're a kid, you're one of those clever little brats that don't tell anybody about it, because you got to keep the secret. Those kinds of people do not do well in what you might call evolutionary compaction. When you awaken your inner energies, you're going to be overwhelmed. So if you're not solid in your existence at a deep level, and you may not know you are, you can think, but I'm just a normal guy. Well, you're a normal guy who happens to view life from a certain way where you're not going to get blown away by psychic forces. All you have to do is hone your discernment a little bit. That was back then. And the genies helped you. They took you. Remember where we had like the 4 levels? It's like back then, basically we would do the genies in terms of it's like path working. So no rituals, no messing around with anything. Basically take the seal, focus on it, meditate on it like they do in yoga, or slap it against the wall, as we said, until the genie comes out.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'd put it under your pillow, and some people would have dreams. But the thing is that there would always be some kind of alteration in thought, alteration in feeling, where you would feel like, oh, this is a presence. This symbol here actually responds in a way that I comprehend. And so within the patterns of my life, I'm seeing the pattern of the genie genie come in, and the genie is basically communicating with me, and I respond, and that's meaningful. It actually makes sense. It actually has constructive outcomes. Oh, you're deluding yourself. But it has constructive outcomes.
Exactly.
So if it has constructive outcomes, how can I be deluding myself?
I know, man. It's like all I needed, really Tai Chi did it for me when, my body started moving and it didn't feel like I was doing it. And it's like, that's all it took. Just something, some kind of something that I can feel.
Can you just explain that a little bit? Because you also, I knew this before, but when you said it so simply years ago, of how did Tai Chi show you that your body was moving on its own?
Well, you just, like your normal Qigong stance where you bend your legs, you tuck your hips in, you just stand there for a little while. I think you've even experienced this as well.
Yes.
You feel an energy, and all you have to do is just let the energy move your body. So it's kind of like a Ouija board or a witch board. You know how that thing kind of moves? Yeah. It's the same thing. And then from there, different.
Like
exactly. It's like dowsing. And so from there, it felt like different entities were coming into my body, teaching me how to do whatever it is I was trying to learn how to do. Move this way and move that way. It became such a regular thing. I started giving them names. And from then, that's when my wife fell into depression. And then after that, that's when I got into magic, because it's like, okay, that's all it takes.
A Christian would say, it was the occult, that the Tai Chi is evil, and it's the one that made your wife go crazy and the demons possessed you. And to their logic, it's like, and then you went into magic? Of course you did. The demons wanted you to go into magic. Well, was the result constructive or not?
The result was absolutely constructive, man. Absolutely. I am like so many. I mean, it was not easy, but so many good outcomes came from this. I don't think I'd be alive if I had not gone down this path. I think I'd probably be dead or, in a real bad state.
Yeah, and this is honest talk here. This isn't like, it's not an infomercial here. There's nothing to sell,
Yeah,
it changed my life.
Too, because here's the thing. I am having so much fun doing this every step of the way. I'm going to sound like a salesman, and that is not what I'm trying to do. So, because it's not for everybody. But if you're into it, if it calls you, like Tai Chi for like, ever since I knew what it was, I just was so hungry for it, but I couldn't find any teacher. I couldn't find anything. And in my 30s, I basically just found videos on the internet, and I'm like going, this is what it is. And it's like, oh my God, it started snowballing from there. But the same thing, that same lock of, oh my God, that calls me, happened when you on the forum started talking about, hey, would you like to summon a genie? And then you gave this little, what do they call those things, emojis, and it was like an emoji of a crystal ball and like a
the
magic
wizard on top, some crazy,
something like that. And I looked at that and I saw but you didn't say genie, you said jinn. And as soon as I saw jinn, I'm like, that is like really calling me. So if you have that kind of feeling, then, I definitely think this is for you. But,
The thing is, in your case, look, you learn esoteric stuff from somewhere. And most people stick to tried and true traditions that are, even if they're watered down, even if they're diluted, even if they're regulated, at least you know that it's not a complete con job. There's some truth in it, because anybody can sound like they know what they're talking about. Anybody.
Yeah.
A lot of channelers, I'm really doubting if they're channeling. All you have to do is just, how do you say, stream of consciousness speaking. You associate words, you associate symbols. Anybody who knows like neurolinguistic programming, things like that, who's the art of rhetoric, or just has that intuitive sense of, sometimes authors do it, where you just write and it comes through. You have a download, so to speak. So you can easily train yourself, and especially if you meditate a little bit, to have downloads of whole aspects of your mind you're not even aware exist. And these indeed can tune into other entities that come off as subpersonalities only if they keep repeating presence and if you can't integrate them. The point is that unless you have a resilient psyche, you're going to have a problem, because this is about opening the mind up to what amount to collective level intelligences. It's not the genie that carries the threat. It's that the fact that the genie is part of an ecosystem of awareness that connects to the lowest levels of human mentality and beingness, the dark levels of the human soul, so to speak. It's the underworld. It's where all the dead shades are. It's everybody who has a resentment. You think they all went to heaven and left? Every kind of hatred, every kind of negativity. Why, when people get in and as soon as their subconscious is cracked open a little bit, they flip down and resorted to the worst possible interpretations or trying to understand it, because it's basically in a society, for whatever reason, conditioned to discourage any kind of personal empowerment. Of course it is. We're social beings. Nobody's going to really want you to be empowered unless you prove that you're mature enough to earn it. That's a different story. And you don't have to be a saint. You don't have to go and help people all the time. It's like, but you're not going to be hurting anybody. And if you can alleviate suffering without your own being have to sacrifice, then you can do it. That's why you learn it, because when you help yourself, you should be helping others at the same time. It's a field.
Well, one thing that you said years ago is like, how can you have fun when the person next to you is miserable? There's just no.
Yes.
It doesn't work. It's like
exactly.
everybody has to be in the party. If someone else is unhappy, I'm going to feel that, and then I'm going to be unhappy, and I don't want that to happen.
Let's move the magical aspect of the conversation a little differently. We're talking hermetic stuff now. So this whole system of summoning the genies in a circle, that's just a good example of a magical system. It's just structured, and we can talk everything around that because we have it in common. So this system is worked through, and many other occultists have gotten into it on that level, with the tarot cards. The tarot cards are much better symbol arrays, let's say, or symbol conglomerates, aggregations, than astrological symbols, which can be misinterpreted very easily. But the tarot cards basically are intuitively designed, at least, and by circumstance, because they weren't originally made for occult purposes. They basically depict a parade. That's why they call them trumps. Because it's a victory parade, a triumph parade. So in Italy, they had it like the Roman parades, where you got somebody won a war, then they'd parade through the streets with confetti and all of that. And first you'd had the juggler, you'd had the fool that everybody would throw tomatoes at, then you'd have the juggler, which became the magician, then the religious figure, which was the priestess, and so on and so on. And they'd be depicted in things that were like Thanksgiving floats. But the jugglers and people would pass by and they'd entertain. So they depicted all of these stages of the parade, which is what happens when there's a grand victory. You have this big parade. So you can even see occult symbolism in there without an intention of it. You see the city-states in northern Italy would always fight against each other. And one of them, at least in the 1400s, they found these cards that came from the East, and they go, wow, I beat my rivals. I'm the king. I'm the big boss around here now. And so I'm going to make all of these cards now in my image, where my family is going to be the kings and the pages and the queens and all of that, because they were Italian nobles. So they did that, and all of the major arcana are basically their own victory parade, where the empress was his wife and he was the emperor, and the cardinal so-and-so was the high priest, the hierophant, et cetera, et cetera. And he even had actors playing other roles. But then you got into archetypes: the Wheel of Fortune, death, the prisoner, the guy who's punished, or the shaman who sacrifices, the hermit. These aren't really people in the Italian Empire. They're principles. They're archetypes modeled after ancient gods sometimes. The star, that's an Egyptian thing. The star, the sun, and the moon are three phases of Egyptian cosmology. The star is the highest phase. It's the cosmos. The sun is your own life force, the sun, the spirit, your human consciousness too. And the moon, of course, is the biosphere. It's the deep unconscious levels as well. So the tarot cards encompass that. So the victory parade is your whole existence. Then it goes to the universe, where you go through all of these transitions and everything. So the whole card deck encompasses the circle of life, birth, death, everything, just through a couple of symbols. But if you look deep enough in each one, you can adapt them into anything. That's why they're so versatile. That's the magic of them. It's how do these things trigger my psyche so much to be able to open my awareness to have these experiences. So there is one symbol that came up, for example, and that's the Lovers. The card that says the Lovers depicts two people in love, a male and a female. That's the basic premise. Polarities, plus and minus, yin and yang. And you have Cupid above. The ancient Greeks called this Eros. During the creation of the world, an egg hatched with a serpent wrapped around it, and Eros came out. Eros is the love that bonds everything. And it's not really emotional love so much. It's beyond that. It's basically the unity of everything. It's I love this. I want this. And not to consume and crap out, but to relate to it, to have experiences with it. I want to exchange. I want to move around. I want this to be my environment, or this to be my nourishment, or this to be my lover, this to be my understanding, any kind of relationship with it. So it's you and whatever you encounter in the world, which can be everything, and then it's the relationship between you and everything. And that relationship is divine. That's the divine. If you can get into the essence of the relationship of yourself with everything, you will find that it's an interplay of genuine awareness, genuine beingness, genuine feeling, genuine and toxicity. It's there. It's peppered in. And that, and it's like, no, that's no, mystical teaches you to actually get away from the world. Magical teaches you to engage with the world. And there are Eastern traditions like Tantra where they mix the two. But they're not easy because people have unstable psyches and they have to confront these psyches. Now, the thing is, this is what I wanted to say. When I first engaged with the genies, they attacked me like the Exorcist movies or Rosemary's Baby or any kind of crazy B-movie monsters jump out of a book and just give you nightmares. And I wasn't even scared of them. This was an actual presence that was like a ravenous beast. Sometimes I would have like good relations. And in the end, it wasn't the genie itself. It was everybody else that summoned it. Every human that expected something of it and got angry when they didn't get it or whatever, or projected their fears about it. Just a suppository, not a suppository, those things. A repository. It was a suppository. I'll tell you, man, it tried to be. Hey,
we'll probably save this for next time, but I got some stories that kind of parallel that.
Well, let's jump to them right away because we'll get back to the old, let that image fade away before people can't unsee it. So there is like the lower end of the body, the root center. There's like a little area where there's a bundle of, I won't even call them nerves, who knows, but there are energy pathways that do go into the lower body. And the rectum is very, very sensitive, just like the cervix in women is also sensitive in that respect. And they call that the center that roots to the earth. Earth energies come up and pass through that nexus of pathways in order to register as biologically compatible. We're always connected to the earth. We're always circulating electrical currents and charges and patterns back. And the same thing with the sky. And being aware of that isn't mumbo jumbo. But at the same time, if the only thing anybody's concerned about is just who is that? Oh, somebody I knew from Asia. But anyways, the guy goes, yeah, there's a friend of mine on the internet that just says, get laid, get paid, get even. That's why I do occultism. Those are the three motives. There is no other motive to do magic. And it's like, yeah, for a while, but then I just get real and get a hobby. So those are his desires: get laid, get paid, get even. And the rest of it is just get a hobby. And that's fine. But when you approach it that way, you're approaching it from your instincts or these reactions that want to restrict your experience to the five senses. Then you stop certain air conduits of other energies coming in to compensate. Your ecosystem is unbalanced, like water that's stagnant, that gets microbes in it. So you get infected, and then your psyche isn't really at the happy place it used to be when you started this. So it's about toxicity, and some people will define it in terms of good and evil, and there's a place for that. But the point is that when we started the genies, the first level, it's about cultivating yourself. What they say, you are the magic, that's not a cliche. The Magus is the magic. So you are an event. Your whole life is an event. Your whole being is an event. It's an ongoing event. It's an ever-present event. And you are orchestrating that event as the event itself. And what matters to the event is its relationship with everything else, because you're individualized. You actually have a center of being where you say, wow, this is me, and then the rest of it is I have to relate to it. Alchemy is basically taking spirit, which is immortal, and infusing it into the energy body. Then the energy body remains alive after death, and you can consciously incarnate. Or you don't fragment into 1,000 elements like in the Taoist system, where your organ energy is just dissipate. So if you can sustain an awareness like that, then the next step is to make it physical. So Jay is an example of somebody who naturally came into magic, proved all the Christians wrong, so because he's not possessed and turned into a monster, and he also proved all the other.
Not yet. Give me time.
Not yet. And he's also an example that he knows completely that there are messed up people and that there are people that shouldn't be involved with this stuff.
Yeah.
And we have our own preconceptions, of course, but by putting it down into a set of symbols that have a symmetric relationship with each other, that represent the course of evolution, that represent the course of a lifetime, and then saying, okay, look, we first deal with the genies not as that, but as independent entities in a certain order where they're associated with as planets, for example, because they come into categories. And then we learn to commune with them. We learn to understand them. We meditate on each one separate. Now I have it honed down. But Jay and some other people were beta testing it for me as well. When I started, though, I wouldn't be responsible for anybody because the reaction was hostile for more than a decade. This thing came to an abrupt halt because I had the Aleister Crowley edition, and that's what I used. And then I used another online edition that was the original. The way that, whoever wrote this Goetia book or little pamphlet or list that wrote the original seals, there are several copies of different people doing it. But this one, the seals are a little simpler. Crowley embellished them, and he put his own essence in them. In Taoism, you need to cultivate, then you get your psychic abilities, then you do the magic. You don't hop off the boat and start throwing talismans around or summoning entities and doing stuff like that. We're going to get into a lot of things. And it's going to seem disjointed, but you'll be able to just listen to it like a narrative, because we're talking about ourselves as well. But we're also talking about ourselves as occultists, not as occultists of wearing robes or whatever. I mean, we both have beards, and so what, and ponytails, and that's just because we like it.
Well, that's that's the style. Beards have come back, and the man bun is like the way to go with hair. So and then again, I don't know. Never underestimate the power of a good costume. So
that's right.
I feel like I want to wear a robe.
It's like, who is that crazy fucking,
Well, when I do this, because I do love the camera. I love the camera. I love stage. I love all that kind of thing.
Look, man, so you look like a wizard now. You actually look like a wizard. You got the face of a wizard. You're practically wearing the clothes of a wizard.
Well, it helps me because this is the outfit that I'll wear and other outfits that I'll wear when I'm teaching. And it kind of gives the whole lesson it gives it a spirit of, because I'll have notes and I'll take notes. It's kind of like a spiritual therapist kind of thing, and the students love it. It's pretty cool.
No, it's good because that's the impression I want to give. You're actually sitting there having the vibe of somebody who's absorbed the whole esoteric stuff, and it has changed you.
Yes, it has. Yeah,
it's changed you. You were a different person before.
Yeah.
And it's not just because the years passed and all of this. A lot of the changes were abrupt. There were emotional things going on and a lot of stuff. And you went from, let's say, the first level that we did this stuff, which is the personal psychological, psychotherapy. Use the jinn as psychotherapy, and they will gladly take on that role. You're not asking anything of them. You're not basically treating them as gods or anything. See, that's the thing. This is not something that even contradicts. Oh, yes, the devil's words.
And
no.
I'm not. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I don't know whether this would be advice or this would be just something I did that I really valued. But maybe I shouldn't say this is my advice to somebody doing this, but really doing it at that level did a hell of a lot for me. And it really, asking the genies to be like a psychotherapist.
Look, you were already channeling.
That really, really brought it into granite for me. That
exactly.
There were some blind spots, and Dana helped me through those. But once that happened, then me and my dad finally, like, I better be careful, I may start crying here. So anyway, me and my dad resolved a lot of issues. He passed away, and then it's like, Jesus, I'm an oak now. I really feel solid. And I'm just really happy. Like, and I've been that way for like a good 5 years now.
Exactly.
And,
so you can say people need to know themselves enough to know what they can accept. You don't say, oh, you said this was going to transform you or do this. You came into the picture saying, okay, just tell me what you know, and I'm going to try it every step of the way. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, we move on. And that's logical, isn't it? That's something very mature and very sensible. I said, yeah, I wouldn't do it any other way because I'm testing a lot of this stuff myself. I've come back, and now I'm able to actually commune with these jinn, and to the point where I've realized that it's almost like, look, you enter the collective unconscious or your own consciousness, your own subconscious. You clear out the baggage, you clear out the toxins, you clear out the debris, and then you can come into a better relationship with these entities, so to speak. You're going to enter a zone where you were hurt once at that same level of awareness, where you were intuitive and something happened, or where some subconscious communication with people is going on and it's hurting you and you don't even know it. Anyways, issues upon issues, guilt, shame, everything we have to deal with as we grow up. That's the psychological level. And with something like the jinn, if you can incorporate them at that level, and you can, because like I said, first of all, you do not ask much of them. All they do is give you advice. And second of all, you do not relate to them at the deep subconscious level it takes to create a miracle in your life called magic. You go, okay, I want you to make somebody my friend who's my enemy, and they have deep-seated hatred, so the genie moves heaven and earth and does that. Or create an earthquake, a real physical one. And it might happen because it was synchronistic. Or change the weather or something like that. But the point is that once you get these effects, you've disrupted something at a deeper level than you may be able to handle, because then you send ripples of cause and effect that can affect you directly or indirectly. You might not even see it. Or you might think you're unscathed, depending. It's different for everybody. But at the level of engagement, which I called level 1, which is the psychological level of basically tuning into the archetypes and then opening up your intuition to what's going on, and nobody's going to give you. Sometimes you will be confronted with a shadow dynamic of yourself, or maybe the genie, or something that's a negative energy. Jay here had an experience of the sleeping bag demon.
Oh God, yeah.
Tell him the story of the sleeping bag demon.
I was in Tokyo, and things were rolling great, man. I had hit a zone where I could walk up and talk to anybody and make anything happen, and everybody walked away happy. It was just really cool. I'm like going, man, if I could get a visa right now, I could go into acting, and I could this is like possibilities are there. I can feel like a cool feminine energy everywhere. I could go up and talk to girls that are way out of my league, and nothing ever really happened, but it was just a great communion, just a really cool energy, and it was just awesome. And so here I am in bed at night, and it was a genie experience where I was just wrapped up in this dark sleeping bag, and I felt like I was in my tent back in Colorado.
But you weren't in your tent. This was a dream that you were in your tent.
This was a dream that I was in my tent, but it was so real. It was so lucid and so real. I could feel the material around me. And I can't remember what the genie, quote unquote, said, but it amounted to it was a really dark voice. And then after that, it was like, do you really think you're this good, or something like that? Or do you really think you have it all figured out? But it was with a dog kind of. A
lot of these guys have hoarse voices. It's in the description.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, and then he flew away, and I saw him flying away, and it was like an open sky. And then I just kind of woke up sweating and everything. And then I just, got a little coffee, went to my computer, bang, my computer crashed. Everything fell apart after that. But it was not that big of a deal because I was still good. Everything was cool. But then I went back to America, and that's when everything fell apart bad. And I fell into a group of old friends, shall we say. And then it was about almost upwards of a decade worth of lessons that I never would learn until a friend helped me out of that vortex. And but anyway, that was the sleeping bag demon story, and it basically just it showed me the blind spots, or at least the genies tried to, and I was just too, shall we say, immature to see them, or just too. You pointed it out every step of the way, Ari, and it was just like, after a while, you just had to give up. There was just no making sense to me. There was just no communication. It was just boom, wall, blocked, and I would look for any excuse to say, no, I'm okay. This is okay. I can stay with this group of people. Everything's going to be okay. And it's like, but anyway, so that's the experience.
In order to keep people up to snuff, and those of them who know the Lesser Key of Solomon know that the various spirits in there are categorized in 7 categories according to the planets, the kings, the marquis, the dukes. And what I had done was place these planetary attributes in a Kabbalistic format. Not the tree of life that people use, but a 3-dimensional one called the cube of space, or the sphere of space, or a double pyramid. And you work through these one at a time.
Those are all my familiars. There's like 4 or 5 of them that'll come up at once, and then they'll go away, and then more will come. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing, because these familiars, if you look at them deeply, they aren't just entities that roam around nature, coming from nature entities. They're actually cultivation methods personified. This is the spirit of the awakened energy body. What's the spirit of the heart chakra? They're very similar like that, where you have, in India, you have this chakra manual that very well known that basically says, okay, every chakra, every energy center of the spine has a deity. And it has a goddess associated with it. And it has another day, and it has a sacred animal associated with it. All of these are representations of energy, power, and experience. They cultivate feeling. And if you focus on them, they will also change your awareness so that your internalized, let's say, your energy pathways open up, and that's well known to a lot of people who are involved in this kind of thing. You started off with the planetary order. By the time you went through the second time or something like that, it's almost like you had resolved your psychological issues. But the second round is basically issues of relationship. That's where relationship comes in. It's the issues with other people. So then you got to perceive your blind spots.
Yeah.
And this is the most understandable thing. In order to avoid suffering, we will do anything. There are levels in our subconscious that we don't want to face. We will go into a panic, scream, die, not to go there. And eventually we realize that there's nothing really that's threatening you over there, if you can approach it in a way that's on your terms. You need to approach it, and what the genies help, if you can tame them, if you can approach them, because the psychological is basically they're going to test you. They tested you. They brought you, okay, this is your blind spot. Here's another one. Okay, you come in and you're crashing here, but the crash is never too abrupt. Imagine if you didn't have the genies, if you didn't have any kind of awareness of this stuff, and you just went off like a normie. Maybe you had your music and your beer,
No, I'd be dead. There would be no. I'm a firm believer that it was. I had a cousin who died at 50 on a hike. And I really related to him. And when he died, we didn't really talk a whole lot. It's just that there's just something about him. It's like, I look back on it now, and what I was feeling was we just kind of share the same destiny. And, I'm 55 now, and I'm not dead. And I think I would have, when I heard that he died, my heart sank. And I'm like, not that I was missing him so much, but of course I missed him. He's my cousin. No, Kelly was like, Kelly loved to make things. So I love to make things too. So we have that kind of thing in common. But no, when Kelly died, my heart just sank, but in the sense that may happen to me. That was what I was feeling. And I'm like going, oh, this is not good. And I was in my 30s at the time.
It's almost like you were tied somehow, and he's like the stone that goes over the cliff, and now it's tied to your legs. So
okay,
drag you down
we're
or
both
something?
going over as a sacrifice, and it was and it felt like and this was before Ari. I think this was before we met. So, but I at a level I was feeling something where it wasn't even clear feeling, but I didn't know why. Whatever, man. It's all whatever. Anyway.
All right. See, we're being candid here, and we talked about some personal stuff, but it has not really always going to be that way. The personal stuff's going to be for examples. We're not here to parade our lives out in public, but you need examples and you need anecdotes, and we're going to talk about other people. Everything is well meant. There is a right way and a wrong way to do magic and to do the occult and to get into it. Both extreme sides have it wrong, in my opinion, and because they're extremes, there is a balanced way, but you gotta know. It's like the drug issue. I mean, some people are like, yeah, I can do whatever, and it's fine. Other people, they come within 500 feet, and they're gonna go insane on anything.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and some people are like that with alcohol. Give them a drop of something, and they'll get sick. They can't.
Yeah.
There's too many anecdotes to tell. There's too many conversations to have. There's too many things to talk. So if anybody comes across this and you find it interesting, stick around because there's way more to come.
Oh, a lot more.
A lot more.
We didn't
Right.
get it. We haven't got into a fraction yet. We're like at 0.1 right now. We haven't got. There's so much to talk about.
Let's do it. Okay. We'll see you and whoever's listening next Sunday.
All right.
'Cause that's when we make these recordings.
Adios, amigos.